Welcome back. Now, Zimbabwe recently hosted the third International Conference on African Cultures at the National Gallery of Zimbabwe, calling for the restitution and repatriation of African artifacts that were expropriated from Africa during the colonial era. Namibia's very own Desiree Nxanu, who is a PhD candidate for fine arts curatorial practice, presented her findings on colonial processes and its influence on reclaiming indigenous histories. She now joins us in studio to shed more light on this thought-provoking matter. Yeah. Good morning and welcome to Good Morning Namibia.
Thank you for having me, Denver.
I tried my utmost to, on this International Human Rights Day, International Women's Day, do justice to your surname.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Very well. Please talk to us about the recently held conference.
So, they titled it Africa Speaks, right? And I think it was an intentional ideal to say Africa Speaks. It was a way to get all African states represented in one space where we are all dealing with the legacies that we've inherited from colonialization. And I think the biggest of it was the first day, Ms. Mukwai, Prof. Mukwai, who opened up the conference. She was the opening speaker for us. She started off with this performance piece where she was paying homage to her ancestors. And she said, as much as we are people that we come from people, we are not a people of nothing, and we know why some of these practices have to take place, and that these practices are ways that pave ways and pave things for us to be happening. And one of the things that she said that was very profound for me was, it doesn't, there's things in a name that sometimes a name that you carry, well, you are given a name with purpose, with intent. And I think as an art curator, that's what one always looks at. An artist is always curating with intent, with purpose. You know, in Africa, we don't just create for the sake of art's sake. It's always got to have a meaning, a symbolic meaning, or it's got to do something, evoke something in somebody, you know. And after she had done that, then when I was giving my presentation on the first day, because she opened up with a premise to say, we have to address ourselves and where we are coming from and who we are as a people, and identify that, because what they did when they came into our land was remove those things that were of power to us. So it's removing of your name, or it's removing your home, who you are as a person, what grounds you. I mean, when they took the Benin bronzes, it's removing what the king's plague was at his house homestead. So all of that has symbolic meaning, and these things are out of context represented in spaces that they don't have any meaning. They even have wrong names, you know, so it's not applicable to them, but it has more significant meaning for us, and it's about that reclaiming that back. And of course I do it through a practice of oral history collating. So I do a lot of interviews, and I do it I started off with my grandmother, because I thought, like, well, where do you start? If you want to know about who you are, where do you start? And
that's a powerful start, right?
Yeah. My PhD is a very autoethnographic practice where you are looking at who I am. So I don't speak on other cultures, and I realized that even with classifications, I mean, colonization had classification systems that were applied to us. And my grandmother was moved. She was part of the forceful removal from the Hochland Park to the Katutura. And then my grandfather decided, no, they're not going to remain in Katutura, and moved her to Ochivarango. So my mom, being the youngest, all of them were classified as Namara, although they are Griqua Bushmen. You know, so I am inheriting this misclassification. I'm dealing with objects. I mean, when one looks at objects that are deemed as craft, very much in an ethnographic state in the galleries that I'm working with, and I'm like, well, we can't keep naming them craft because they are still a contemporary practice.
Sure, Desiree. Yeah. Your passion is so evident and almost tangible. Africa Speaks being the name of the conference. Yeah. Have we not been speaking as Africans, or have we not been speaking up enough?
I think that the aim of it was that we create a unified voice. Namibia fights, and Namibia can have its own fight. And the one thing that I realized as part of the conference is that Namibia has success stories. And I think the success stories stem from the fact that it was the traditional authorities that combined, that actually took the law and that fought for the human remains and the return of the objects, and that we even have the Bible and the work of the Hendrik Witbooi that came back, plus some of the human skulls, you know. So it's a very sensitive subject. I mean, because you want to have these people buried, because I think as much as you don't bury, there's no peace.
And
It doesn't bring
closure.
and closure and just letting it go. We have successes, but other countries haven't even started the process of
Thank you.
asking back. And I think they are trying to see how can we do what, and it was part of that sharing process. So I was able to share of my research, which isn't as much as it is in I'm part of the process. No,
Thank
but
you.
it's looking back at me as a Khoisan lady and where I'm coming from and what that means to me and what I need to do about it moving forward, because I have a 7-year-old daughter. In just cooking a meal, there's stuff, it's a life lesson you're being taught. It's not cooking a meal, So how do I enforce that in this Western way that is imposed on us, that she doesn't forget,
What
and
you've-
that I keep teaching her those values and principles?
What you've touched on, and I'd like us to flesh it out a bit, to what extent does a platform such as Africa Speaks speak to the emancipation of African cultures?
Oh, heaven. I think it was a very powerful space to be. I spoke on the first opening day, and thereafter, all I did was sit quietly and listen, and I learned so much. The emancipation of our cultures, if we don't enact it ourselves, is not going to come, because you would rob from me and steal from me and dehumanize me in that method, in that ethos. But if I am saying no, but I'm actually proud of who I am. Yes, they are outcasts, they are who they are. But what I want to do now is to look at me and how I can fix that for myself. And in only fixing myself can I help my community and help my Namibia, So, and that was the reclaiming of the identity of myself, of my classification, of the spaces I inhabit and how I treat the people and the objects I deal with on a day-to-day. So it has to do with you looking to yourself first, because I'm a curator in a National Art Gallery. As a curator in a space like that, if I'm not careful, I'm going to allow the same colonizing process to be taking place continuously in that space. And it's why we did projects like the big What's Your Story? You know what I mean? Because it's the artist telling their own story. It's not the curator telling somebody else's story.
Sure, that's powerful.
It has to be that way. And that's how you emancipate the artist. Because now we were positioning artists on visual platforms, but at the same time, it's making art accessible to the buyers who couldn't come in physically into the country, So you are trying to figure out how best do you practice your craft. And you can only do that when you know you have what you are doing for yourself, and you can help somebody else do that for themselves as well.
Very
and
well.
if we don't speak about it, and I think that's why they said Africa Speaks, if we don't speak about it, it doesn't happen. Just right after the conference, we got redlined. With no reason, really. You know what I mean? You look at all of that and you're like, oh my gosh, like we're still dealing with the same mindset. And if I can fight it, but if I'm fighting it by myself, Denver, you understand? Like I'm like a little needle in a haystack. I'm here and I'm a little bit there and I'm a
Thank
little
you,
bit there.
Desiree. I wish you and I had the entire International Human Rights Day, International Women's Day to unpack these very pertinent issues.
Yeah.
Just give us a condensed synopsis of your research paper, please.
Okay. So I look at people like, I come from a culture of patchwork. And patchwork is I look at it as in connecting the indigenous knowledge to the actual objects. So it's Laslapian, you know what I mean? So it's Laslapian, it's you take this, you take that, and you're trying to create something out of it. So that's the conceptual approach I'm doing with that. So it's basically looking at who are the artists, like Paul Kido, who just passed on, who are my lineage artists, and bringing them to the fore and speaking about them and writing about them. And the ideal is connecting them to the existing pedagogy, to the existing literature that exists. So in our education systems, when I went to the UNAM, I was taught about Rembrandt, and I would have liked to be taught about John Mafangeo. So that John Mafangeo, you represent him, who he was, how he started off as a pioneering artist, and looking at Mr. Medicia and Papa and the now Amufenyus, the young ones in their pop culture, and representing that coherent story, so that becomes what is taught to my daughter if she chooses to study, because then we are teaching our ways of making and who we are as a people and why that is important to us, instead of me perpetuating the white canvas and acrylic You know what I mean? So, and that's the practice I'm engaging in. It's basically going back to yourself. So you start, it's a personal, that's why it's also ethnographic, but it's also the application to the practice itself. So how I would then, in any of the projects that I engage with, how you are looking at that and adapting that type of a thinking and helping the artists and helping the people you engage with think in that vein.
Thank
because
you.
then only we have an authentic representation of who you truly are.
Thank you very much. Soon,
Yeah.
we will call you Dr. Desiree. Briefly touch on your research and how that will aid the cause, in fact, all of the above,
Yeah.
as mentioned by you.
So I'm scheduled to leave for the Metropolitan Museum of Art in
And you
January.
will?
And I will. We will not be redlined. I'm looking forward to that. So the year I will spend in New York, and it's looking at the collection that they house. And so far I've found only a necklace that is representing Namibia, but it's looking at what are in spaces, why those were collected, because items that were collected because they had some type of a meaning for the publics back home. There was some kind of an importance or relevance that was to the publics back home. And that's why it was taken. It wasn't just, oh, let's also take this, you know? So it's looking at that and discussing if it was donated, who donated and why? And is it possible that we can just have it back, please? You know what I mean? So it's the idea of not only looking at Namibian objects, but also looking at African objects. Because at the end of the day, you want to have the injustices that were done. You want to rectify those injustices basically with your practice. So I think that's what I'll be doing for the next year. And then after that, I'll be writing up all the findings and how you employ these practices in the different spaces. And it'll be like looking at, for example, a home, how metaphoric is a home to us. We carry our home everywhere we go with us. So one of the key, it's in three legs. So the first one is looking at, I'm going all the different places, and all these places I'm going, I don't feel I'm home in them, but I have my home with me. You know, there's something that reminds you of who you are as a person, and by the time that you are there, it reminds you of why you are there to do that. Because you see, I mean, when I was in London, you just felt like, oh my gosh, it's so cold. The people are so not friendly, you know. And in just having that, when you call home, you feel that home in you. So I'm looking at the home as a physical construct, but also the home metaphoric of what it means. So it's having artists engage with collections, with spaces. So it would be I'm thinking it might be an artwork, because I actually found an artist that can do the metaphoric home. So that it's an engagement in that space, so that you have the continuation of the story, but you have the physical home construct. Sorry.
Very well.
Sorry.
With your indulgence, we'd like to touch base with you from time to time when you are in New York. So please be available for that. Your brief message to our grandmothers, mothers, sisters, daughters watching this morning.
Oh, heaven. I would like to tell them thank you for who you've been to us. And I think at the end of the day, if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be who we are today. Because I think if the values and the principles that were instilled in me by my mom, and like my mom enforcing that through my grandmother, if those weren't there, you would kind of belong to the world and not know who you are as a person and why you were brought here, or not identify why you are doing what you need to be doing, you know. So I would just want to thank them and thank you for being your best selves that you could be to us. And I'm trying to be that for me and for my little one, and, you know, for the people that I engage with.
KAOS.
Yes, KAOS.
That was PhD candidate Desiree Nganuse, exuding nothing but warmth and passion. We're right back after a brief break.